Hello and welcome back to Tuesday at Dobbs's. Thank you as always everyone for getting in touch. The best place to do so, comment section below, and if you have a longer story, maybe with some pictures, you can email hi@tuesday@dobbs.com. I'll start off addressing some potential misinformation that I gave last week. The EU, this is what I said last week. The EU set to, from about the year 2035, set to make it illegal to do major repairs on your personal vehicle once it hits 15 years old, in order to try and get these old vehicles off the roads. A few people sent me over the exact EU proposal, so the website that you can check in the written description if you want to. But I found this interesting, and also I found it very reassuring that it looks like classic vehicles won't be forced off the road in this specific legislation. Have a listen to this. This is the EU End of Vehicle Life proposed legislation, which is waste and recycling end of vehicles. Quoting here: "As in other cases, these criteria for end-of-life vehicles are first targeting illegal operators who, for example, use stolen cars or pile up old used cars for the purpose of smuggling spare parts or used cars without proper identification. It is not to hinder legal activities by private owners," that's important, by private owners or hobbyists of vintage cars. So the EU legislation or proposals even specifically mention private owners, hobbyists of vintage cars. Continuing, "If a car needs a repair, any part," this is all in bold letters here, "any part may be changed as long as the vehicle is fit to pass the roadworthiness inspections and remains authorised to operate on the EU roads." Let me do one more bit here, just to confirm that good news. "The proposed rules to determine when vehicles legally reach their end of life primarily aim at addressing activities by illegal operators who intentionally escape the legal route for handling EVs. Other examples of illegal operations are selling of completely flooded vehicles or unsafe vehicles with severe technical defects, etc., etc." To sum up, the EU legislation isn't to get all cars 15 years or older off the road as soon as they have something bad with them. If you're a private owner and you live in the EU and you own a car that's 15 or a motorbike that's 15 years or older, you won't be forced to take it off the road in any sense at all. You can still do a complete engine change, and it even confirms here you can still do engine changes. The legislation is for dodgy car importers and people in those areas to make sure that they won't be able to sell dodgy older vehicles that have been written off. So I think, and I'm delighted by this, I think, at least from this bit of proposed legislation, we're all completely safe. Our classic motorbikes aren't at any risk at all. Thank you all for sending that over. A few of you sent that, but that one was from Mr. Phil, who sent over that link. Really appreciate it. Moving on. EVs. Hi Fred. I listened with interest to the discussion surrounding EU quotas relating to electric cars, but I'm not sure if the impact has been fully understood by the biking community, that of diminishing supply. Consider these quotas. Of all new car sales that must be electric, irrespective of the petrol diesel ban moving on into 2035. So have a listen to this. This year, 2024, electric car sales, they really should be hitting 22% according to the government legislation. By 2025, it's 28%. By 2028, it's 52%. And by 2030, 80% of all new cars sold have to be electric. If they don't hit those targets, there will be big fines for each vehicle sold by the brands to compensate for the lack of electric sales. So these car companies, they will get fined for every non EV they sell. Continuing. On top of this, the following car brands have stated they will be fully electric across the whole range by 2030. So this is in 6 years' time. Alfa Romeo, Bentley, Ford, Jaguar, Mini, Peugeot, Vauxhall, Volvo and Rolls-Royce have all confirmed that in 6 years' time they're only going to sell electric vehicles. I'm not sure that's possible. I'm not sure they'll actually stick to that. I've got a funny feeling they may push that back. Continuing, all of this adds up to an awful lot of cars that will not require petrol stations by the end of the decade, especially as people are incentivized to buy on 2 to 3 year PCP schemes or lease cars, as it will mean they change cars more often and allow the companies to hit their quotas. This for me is where the big problem lies. We're all being pushed into buying EVs, but the real way around this is to do PCP deals where you're changing your car every 2 to 3 years. What's environmentally friendly about changing your car every 2 to 3 years? See, for me, this is the perfect example of how this EV push, it really isn't about the environment. It's really from a commercial point of view, because from an environmental point of view, it makes no sense to be changing your car every 3 years for a newer, more environmentally friendly car when you're doing all the perceived damage to the environment of having a new vehicle every 2 to 3 years. Those two arguments, they don't equate, they don't marry up. Continuing, this in turn means you need less petrol stations, which in turn means it's harder to find petrol, which in turn means that more people move to electric, especially if you also can't park a petrol car due to increased electric-only bays and so on. Delaying the petrol/diesel ban makes no difference at all, nor would totally exempting motorcycles. We're already at the early stages of self-sustaining move away from the ready availability of carbon-based fuels, and this is what will, in the end, drive the replacement of petrol. People may not be the biggest fans of electric bikes, but there may be no choice as availability of petrol shifts in the next few years. And I agree with you to an extent with that. But I honestly believe that the future isn't completely electric. I'll give you an example here. Toyota have always been critics of an EV-only future. And this comes straight from Toyota, who is I think he's the chairman of Toyota. So according to Toyota, the magic number is 30%. He claims that EVs will be capped, unofficially of course, at around 30% of all new vehicle sales. The rest of the market will be satisfied by hybrids, hydrogen fuel cells and traditional combustion engines. That's from InsideEVs.com. My honest belief is that e-fuels, synthetic fuels, will eventually be the way that we can carry on just using our normal cars and motorbikes as they are, because e-fuels, they may be really expensive at the moment, but the transition from where we are now to using e-fuels is seamless. You use the same petrol stations, you use the same vehicles, you just change the fuel from petrol and diesel to synthetic fuels, to e-fuels. At the moment it costs a huge amount for these e-fuels, but that price will come down once it gets onto an industrial scale. The price of producing these e-fuels will massively come down. And you've got the exact same argument at the moment for electric cars, electric motorbikes. The price is gigantic to actually buy these vehicles, whereas with e-fuels, you have no increased cost in making the vehicles because you're using the exact same vehicles, you're just changing the fuel. My personal belief, e-fuels, synthetic fuels, will be the way that we keep our vehicles on the road and the way that we don't have to go to 100% only EV future, because EVs don't work in every category. Andy, thank you. On to Jacek. Oh, Jacek, this is something a lot of people have been asking me over the past 3 weeks. I think as everyone's getting In the mood for a big road trip. From Jacek. Freddie, anyway, when you are biking abroad, do you have motorcycle travel insurance? I'd be interested in having a discussion about motorcycle travel insurance as one of the subjects. Is this really necessary? And what are the general pros and cons? Every year we have a motorcycle tour and have never taken out motorcycle travel insurance. We're Harley riders. My wife has a Sportster Iron 883 and myself a Fat Bob Softail. Jacek. Okay, so Jacek, I have complete honesty. I've never had motorcycle travel insurance. I've had travel insurance before, and of course motorcycle insurance, but never motorcycle specific travel insurance. Let's just take a look at, first off, let's take a look at my motorcycle insurance. This is just your basic run-of-the-mill motorcycle insurance and what it covers. I can see here, basic third-party fire and theft cover. I'm covered in EU countries and a couple of other countries such as Serbia. Anything over that, I need to contact my insurance company and ask them specifically to insure me in that country. What's insured? This is on my insurance. So I've got legal liability, I've got liability cover for other people's property up to £20 million. I've got loss or damage to the motorcycle's value. I've got the foreign use and a couple of other inconsequential bits. But if I were to just open up, so I'm with Swinton at the moment, I pay £60 a year for my insurance. If I open up the extras that I can buy on top of my standard insurance, I can get motorcycle personal accident cover, which covers me for bodily injury up to £20,000, and I can get accidental death, loss of limbs cover up to £15,000. So none of that is big life-changing money. For example, if I die, it looks like I'm only going to get £15,000 payout. So these figures are all relatively small. And of course, I'm only allowed to ride in EU countries unless I pay more money. So let's have a look at motorcycle travel insurance. Things I do for this podcast. So I have applied for this motorcycle travel insurance to give you an example of what's offered and how much it costs. What do you get for this? What is the point in motorcycle travel insurance? Let's start with the big one. And this is from Carol Nash Insurance. So what's covered? We cover a wide range of sporting activities, yada, yada, yada. Here's the important bit. Driving motorised vehicles, excluding quad bikes and buggies, for which you're licensed to drive in the UK and wearing a helmet. So you can basically go to any country that you choose on this insurance policy, and you can choose Europe and the entire world. Pick where you want to go. And you're covered for any motorbike that your driving license covers you for. So for example, if I go to the USA, if I go to Lithuania, I'm covered on any size motorbike. So that is full coverage. That's the biggest selling point. On top of that, if I want to head off on a 3-week trip, it's going to cost me £39, which I think is perfectly reasonable. But what I get for that is a gigantic amount more than my standard motorcycle insurance. Without reading it out too much, you can get the standard cover at £39 or the Premier Plus at an extra £10. If you go for the extra £10 option at a cost of £49, you get medical expenses coverage of £15 million compared to just 21,000 with my standard policy, even with the add-on. On top of that, you get missed departure coverage of £1,000. You get legal expenses coverage, 50,000, personal liability cover, 2 million, and if you die, £30,000. So everything there is gigantically increased. And the best bit about it, all you need to do is pay an extra £5 a month, or £5 for the entire year, £55 annually, and you're covered for the entire year for motorcycle travel insurance. By the way, it sounds like this is an advert. It's not. But I do see the very real difference between standard motorbike insurance and motorbike travel insurance. You're basically completely covered, and if you get a hire vehicle out there, you're covered on that as well if you come off. I mean, you've even got baggage cover at £3,000. I've never considered it, honestly, before, but maybe, Jacek, I may start to do that. What do other people do? What do you all do? Do you swear by motorcycle travel insurance, or is it just not something you'd ever bother with? At £40 for a trip or $55 a year, it's quite tempting. Moving on, a very British disease. I'm going to keep this anonymous, but I found this really interesting, especially because in the past 2 weeks, I've had a Harley-Davidson Fat Bob, and I've also had a Norton Commando. Both of these are expensive premium bikes, so this is especially pertinent. Freddie, just a quick note about the haters. Between you and me, I moved to the USA because of the aspirational mindset of American people. If they see, the Americans, a nice car or motorcycle, or even house for that matter, they aspire to one day be able to achieve it. They don't badmouth it, spit on it, or key it. Of course, I can't speak for all of the US. It's a very big place. But on the whole, I found this to be the case. In the UK, I owned 2 Ferraris, an older one which I raced on the hill climb competitions, and a beautiful 360 F1 Spider. The amount of vitriol I received was shocking. Envy seems to be endemic in some cases. This is fascinating. It's called the British disease among expats out here. Quick story. A friend of mine has a cousin out here in the States who is a newly qualified physician. He drives a tatty old Volkswagen that has been twice around the clock. This guy couldn't be further from a petrol head and sees a vehicle as a means to get him from A to B. He was perplexed as to why he had so few patients in the waiting room at his doctor's office when every other doctor was booked solid. So a friend of his took him aside and said if he was to replace his junker, his old VW, in the parking lot with a BMW or Porsche, then things would change. So what did he do? He bought a new Porsche 911, and within 2 weeks, his appointment book was full. In the US, you are what you drive. Nice car equates to success, and patients want the best. Anyway, rant over. And I'll keep that anonymous, just in case you didn't want me to read your name out. But I've seen a lot of that over the past few weeks. And actually, I've known that as well, because I used to work at a recruitment company. Straight after I graduated from university, I went to work for this recruitment company run by a ridiculously high-flying guy. You know, some of the people in there, the recruiters, they were on 300,000 a year plus. You know, Porsches, Audi RS4s, they all had incredible cars. But the owner of the company, he had a rule. No one was allowed to drive their luxury cars into work. So they had a company car that they'd use if they went for meetings, and the company car was this beaten up old Ford Focus, just even a car that I don't even know if I would drive, yet these guys were all millionaires. But this is the car that they had to take on the business meetings, and the owner of the company flat out would not allow any of the recruiters to bring their luxury cars into work, because he said if people see this car full of Porsches and Audis, they're going to think you're on too much money and we don't trust you. I don't like it. I don't want to be working and accepting jobs from a recruitment company where someone is driving around in a Porsche. So no one was allowed to do it. So these people would have to park their Porsches up down the road and walk into the office. So the office didn't have an illusion of success. Exactly the opposite of the US mindset. I find that fascinating. I tell you what's interesting, the amount of stories that pop up for me in the UK. People with their luxury cars, whatever it may be, and then just people in the streets walking up to these luxury cars, whether it's a Porsche, Ferrari, and jumping on the roof, jumping on the bonnet, throwing a can of Coke into an open Porsche convertible. Just the hatred for people doing well. Yeah, I agree with you. It's very, very evident in this country. I wonder if it's the same in other countries, but definitely in the UK, it is very, very apparent. I notice that all of the time. Moving on to Latvia. Arters, an Italian heavyweight in Latvia. Hi there, I'm from Latvia, and last September, aged 47, I got my riding license. And now I'm a full-fledged motorcyclist. After getting my license, I started looking into what bikes to buy. I had all winter season to do my searching. Arters, I bet you did, because winters in the Baltics, no chance of riding. No chance at all. So that's a good amount of time to look. So winter to look for bikes. I looked through many reviews, but since I'm 6'3", not many bikes fit me. I like cruiser or classic style bikes, but I had to think twice since I was not sure if a big bike would be manageable. I have learnt to ride on a 650cc Kawasaki, and I had no other experience with bikes. After reading a lot of forums, reviews, watching videos, I decided to go for the Moto Guzzi. Arters, let me just check this, Arters. Yes, I've got pics. Have a look at the pics attached. It's a stunning bike. So I went for the Moto Guzzi. Just wanted a shaft-driven and non-chain bike, easy maintenance. I did have a look at the R18, but it was too cramped and too expensive, although a beauty too. Arters, I'm going to get to that BMW R18 cost because it may be different in Latvia. I'm going to show you something that will shock you. Carrying on, since I was looking for a cruiser or classic style bike, I found one that has both. It's a big engine cruiser that has a classic look. It is, of course, the Moto Guzzi Eldorado 1400. No jokes, my first ever big bike, or my first ever bike, is a 1400cc engine. Yes, it's heavy, but it goes like a train. This is a bike I want to look back at after getting off. It gives me a big smile, and I want to ride it more and more. Now I ride around 2UP together with my wife and enjoy the first motorcycling summer. Arters, these Moto Guzzis are incredibly good looking bikes. I'm sure they were never big sellers, but have a listen to this. Have a listen to, this is probably Italian coolness, style and class summed up perfectly. This is from MCN, the connoisseur's choice, Arters. From MCN. From the overall rating on MCN, I love this wording. The Moto Guzzi or Moto Guzzi do style in an effortless, non-trying too hard kind of way. It's fashionable, but not because it's trying to strike a pose, to be the center of attention, but because it's the big bad boy in the bike sheds, smoking instead of toiling during double history. Effortlessly cool. I love that. You know, I had a look at this. Moto Guzzi Eldorado. I typed this into Auto Trader. Nothing comes up. The Eldorado must be a subname for the Moto Guzzi California 1400. So if you want to find one of these exquisite looking bikes, you need to type Moto Guzzi California 1400. But this is the interesting thing. Typed into my search, found one. They start at about £10,500 to £11,000, but this is for an 11-year-old bike. And I'm sure they only cost about £15,000 only when they were new. So in the space of about 11 years, of course you'll have to bear with me for inflation, etc., but owners will only have lost about £3,000 or £4,000 in depreciation. So they're selling, or at least they're being advertised, for serious money. So remember this. 2013 model Moto Guzzi California, £11,000. Now have a look at this, Arta's other consideration. BMW R18 2020 model, so 4 years old, up for sale for £9,495. The Eldorados, the California 1400s, are actually commanding a higher premium than the BMW R18s, at least in the UK, which is incredible. Arta's great choice. I mean, it's a breathtakingly good-looking bike. On now, health woes to a road trip, Australian style. Pictures included. Hi Freddie, in late 2021, I damaged my shoulder and required rotary cuff surgery, resulting in not being able to ride until I was fully recovered. Being over 60 years old, it takes a bit longer to recover than it used to. But at the same time, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and immediately after my shoulder was better, that's tough. I started a course of chemotherapy, during which I suffered bad side effects and spent 2 weeks in hospital, unable to breathe properly. The road to recovery was looking very long by this time. But in your last Tuesday at Dobbs episode, your contributor Henry, 2 Up to Somewhere, touched on the subject of doing it while you can. Following my experience over the last couple of years, I would like to reinforce this thinking. Please tell your followers, do not put off plans, or they may turn into later life regrets. Taking this advice myself, I decided to make a quick solo trip and ride the Triumph T100 Bonneville 50th Anniversary Special Edition to visit a previous work colleague of mine. He had moved to a different city since we worked together. And right now I should mention that I live in Melbourne, Australia, and he had moved to the Gold Coast in Queensland. This wasn't going to be a short blast down the road. A Bonneville really isn't the ideal bike to go touring on when the next petrol station is more than 200 kilometers away. To put that into some context, what would that be in miles? About 130 miles, top of my head. But the Bonneville's tank range is exactly 130 miles. So if you don't take an extra fuel canister strapped to the back of the Bonneville, it probably won't make it. Carrying on, and I had a couple of panic moments when the fuel light was illuminated in the middle of nowhere. All turned out good though, and it all went flawlessly. Overall, I clocked up 2,288 miles on the Bonneville. I mean, that is a serious trip. And it did my suffering mental health a world of good. There's something about riding a motorcycle that makes it much more than just a form of transport. Almost a lifesaver. Michael. Well, Michael, here is to your improved health and many, many more road trips to come. Brilliant to see a Bonneville out in Australia. On now to Bike of the Week, coming indirectly from Dale. Dale, you won't realise this because you haven't recommended this bike for the week, but what you have done is inspired me to look for a certain kind of bike for the week. From Dale, Freddie touring on a motorbike is becoming more popular and definitely easier these days. For me, I can enjoy and have more of an adventure on my bike than a bog standard package holiday can give. You don't need any special bike. This is the key. You don't need any special bike, just the motivation to get up and go. So on Thursday morning, this was last week, so Dale is somewhere off on his road trip, I set off for the tunnel. That's the tunnel from England to France, on a ride to Iceland. Dale, on a ride to Iceland? I mean, in early May, what's that going to be like? I would have thought covered in snow. On a ride to Iceland on my Moto Guzzi V7, I cannot wait. Dale, if you send me pictures, send me an email. hi@tuesday@dobbs.com. I would love to share that Moto Guzzi V7 riding to Iceland in May. Finishing off with Dale, I cannot wait. Dale, first off, have an unbelievable trip. This is the inspiration from what you've said here. You don't need a special bike. So let's put a challenge out to everyone, and I will begin this challenge. You've got a £2,000 budget. You want to buy a motorbike for this upcoming spring-summer biking season. You have a budget of £2,000 and you want to do a proper road trip, a 2,000-mile road trip. What do you buy that's going to be comfortable and capable and reliable enough for £2,000 and powerful enough to take you on this road trip in a manner that lets you actually get back home and enjoy yourself. £2,000 budget. I'll await all of your thoughts and I will share what I think are the best 3. Here's mine. I was surprised at how easy this was. This is a bike I'm not sure if I've mentioned. If not, it's been a while. It is a, let's put the pictures up. It's a year 2000. Let me know what you think of it. Triumph Tiger. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say that this bike is specifically a looker. It's not ugly, but there are finer looking bikes than this. What I like though is the seller, because the seller, unfortunately for him, is like myself as a seller. He advertised this bike 8 days ago and he's already reduced the price by £150. See, this is the mark of a desperate seller, and this is exactly what I do when I sell a bike, because when I've decided I want to sell something, I want it gone so quickly because my attention span's so short. I can't be having a bike for sale for a month or 2 because I want it gone. I want that money even if it means reducing it. So I always end up reducing the price. Oh, okay, if no one's contacted me 2 days later, half the price. If no one's contacted me then, right, reduce it to such a ridiculous amount, people almost think there's something dodgy about it. This guy's done the same. £1,650 already reduced, and it is a 900cc Tiger, MOT'd, so that's the annual check, covered for a whole year, just had new fork seals, brake pads, front and rear, engine service, real lovely bike to ride for its age, the engine's strong, welcome viewing, ready for the summer, no part exchanges or swaps, 50,000 miles. This is a bike that will get you anywhere in absolute comfort. Beat that for £1,650 and that effortless 900cc engine that produces 86 horsepower. This bike covers all of the bases. I'd love to hear your recommendations. Let me know if you can top the Triumph Tiger. And we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching this week's episode. Have a brilliant week all. And I'll speak to you all in the next one.